Oh my god, dude, did it not let up.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be continuing the 5-speed swap series. In the last video, we got the transmission bolted up, which was super exciting. But right now, it's just kind of hanging there by the motor mounts. So we need to get a cross member bolted up so it can support itself, get the T-case back on, and work on getting a center console together so we can actually, you know, shift some gears. So should be pretty exciting. So first things first, I guess we need to get the cross member ready to go back in. Right now, my plan of attack is to use the factory automatic transmission mount, which is this thing in the middle here, because this cross member is made to bolt to that, right? And so my thought is I can use that and then maybe build a plate or something to push it forward to bolt to it. If we're sitting underneath here, you can see this is where that cross member goes, and where are we at? This is where we're trying to get to. So it is a little further forward, right? So I think the best thing to do would just be to get the cross member and bolt it up and see, you know, what we're dealing with as far as what we're gonna have to make or cut or figure out. Alright, y'all, forgive me for the lighting here. I'm working underneath the under the Jeep right now. But you can see I have the cross member bolted up. I mean, they're not tight, but they're sitting in there. And it's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. So there's a bolt here and a bolt here on the factory mount. And the mount for the new training is right here and right here underneath here. They are really close. And the height difference isn't much. I mean, it's pretty damn perfect. So what I'm gonna do is get some plate and drill holes for here and here and here and here, and then try and figure out a way to like box it in to make it a little stronger so it's not just some flat piece of plate. And we should have a transmission mount, so it should be pretty easy. Alright, so I have this plate here. I think this is what I'm gonna actually use to make the mount. It's just some 1/4-inch plate. Should be plenty thick. This is the mount off of the Dodge, so I know that these holes line up with the holes that we're trying to line up with on the transmission. So I'm going to use this as a template, mark out these holes with a Sharpie, and then I'm probably just going to cut a lot bigger than I actually need, and then we'll bolt it up to the transmission, and then we'll slide this under here, and then we can get a Sharpie up under here and mark these holes so we know where they need to line up together, right? Because they have to all be in sync or it's not going to work. And then once it's all done, I'll take it off and I'll trim it, clean it up, and have it looking good. I need to invest in a drill press, you guys. That shit takes way too long. Alright, so theoretically now, pretty nice. So I'll go ahead and cut that out. I'm gonna crawl under there and measure the distance between here and what the mount is. That way I can get an idea of how long I need to actually cut this. Then we'll cut it out, bolt this up, and mark out those holes. Alright, so I crawled under there and it was really close. I mean, I couldn't even really put my thumb in the distance there. So I'm just going to push this a little bit back, give myself some wiggle room, and then try and center these up as best I can. I'm not going to mark these holes yet because obviously I know that these aren't accurate. You know, I didn't actually use a tape measure. So I'm just going to use this as a guide to cut it out. And then once I'm under there and I have everything bolted up, then I'll mark these holes where they actually need to go. there we have it. Pretty rough cut still. I need to clean all the edges off so I don't cut myself, and then we'll bolt it up. Alright, so we're laying under here. My buddy Ethan's back. What's up? And the current sad news is I was in the middle of making the crossmember mount. You can see I was working on that. And we decided to throw the T-case on just to get a look at it. And there's a pretty serious clearance problem with the upper link mount. So the tranny is like super low right now. And it already is hitting that upper link mount if you try and put the drive line in. Yeah. And so
Just maybe, what, half-inch of clearance?
Yeah, and we're not even close to how high we need to go. When we push it up to where I wanted to mount the tranny, the drive line yoke was like behind that mount, basically. So that is a major problem, especially, you know, if you think about the fact that this is going to an Atlas after this. You know, that might be bigger. That driveline yoke might be in a different spot slightly. You know, I'm going to a high pinion 60, so it's going to be higher up on the other end. You know, just lots and lots of problems. And that upper link is already causing problems up here where the starter is. You know, and I planned on just moving it out, but that doesn't solve this. So we sat here for like 10 minutes thinking about solutions, and I think the current solution is to basically cut that mount off and do the exact same thing on this side and just move my upper link to the passenger side. Since there's no starter on this side anymore, you know, maybe we can do that. The tunnel isn't meant to have a link there though, and so I'm gonna have to beat the floorboard up or cut it out and remake it, one of the two. So we have the T-case pulled again. I got all the exhaust heat shielding off, and currently what the plan is to just either cut some relief cuts or cut this completely out, or beat this in. I don't know. Either way, make room to move this mount over here, and then move the upper link all the way down. You know, we'll have to move it on the axle side as well to the passenger side, and then hopefully we'll have clearance for everything. That means the exhaust will probably be running down the driver's side now rather than the passenger side. So yeah, wish us luck. Here.
That'll work. That'll work great.
What's up, YouTube? Hi there. Alright, so we cut this pretty massive hole here to make room for the plate and mount for the upper link on
coming through the hole
on the passenger side. So the next step is to secure the front axle and take the upper link off, and then start mocking it up over here. All right. All right, so the next part is to cut this bracket off all the way around. I'm gonna try and not ruin it because I don't wanna order another one. I'm hoping I can cut right along the seam and then just clean it up and transfer it to the other side. There we go. All right, so I thought I'd give an update. I'm not really filming this whole process because this build series is about the transmission, not necessarily my suspension. So I got this bracket off, which was the one over here, and I cleaned it up. You can see I salvaged it pretty good. It's totally reusable, so that's exciting. I got a plate cut out and tacked on to mount it to. So this is gonna go right here, right? We've got a pretty massive hole in the floorboard all the way down, just to clearance where the link is gonna go. Because if you imagine, right, the link is here. It's gotta go all the way to the front axle up there. And so this hung down pretty far from the factory, and it was totally gonna be in the way. I tried beating it up and I just couldn't really get a good swing at it. So I said, screw it, cut it all out. I'll rebuild the floorboard later. Not a priority right now. So other things I need to do is I need to build the little triangle gussets on both sides to keep this from falling off. I also would like to gusset this a little bit more. One other thing that I had to clearance, let me see if I can get a flashlight down in here, is this little piece of the transmission here. So this piece right here, I'm pretty sure that is a like bracing to the bell housing of the transmission for the clutch fork. And it used to stick out, I mean like really far. And so I just took a flap disc to it and slowly sanded it down, making sure that it wasn't like, you know, breaking through at any point, and it didn't. And you can see, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that. You can see that it didn't ever, you know, I didn't find any holes or anything, so that was just a lot longer than it really needed to be. I'm sure it's probably for structural purposes, but so I ground that down to help clearance it, and now I've got a straight shot to the axle down there. So the next step is going to be to cut this bracket off. This is the one on the axle for the upper link. I'm gonna try and do the exact same thing and cut right along the weld and try and not ruin it, because I don't really have time to wait for a new bracket to come in the mail. So I'm gonna try and cut it off, clean it up, and then over to the other side it goes. Ta-da! So I'm pretty happy with that. I was able to get that off and not totally ruin it. You can see it sits nice and flat all the way around. This side I gouged pretty good with the cutoff wheel, but I just brought it over to the weld table and built up weld and ground it down. And it's definitely not perfect, but it's totally weldable. So, and I got the passenger side of the axle all cleaned up here, ready for this to go wherever it needs to go. I'm not gonna weld it on yet until I know where it lines up with on the link over there. So I'll go get that side tacked up, and then I'll get the link bolted in, and then I'll get the heim as straight as possible on both joints, and that's where I'll weld this one. Alright guys, there has been a ton of progress and work off camera. I have the upper link in. Ooh, shiny. I have the upper link in. It's not fully welded, but it's tacked on both sides. I do have a bead on that because it is supporting the weight of the vehicle right now. And it clears. You can see I have the triangle gussets. This is all welded and cleaned up. And we have a cross member in. So this is exciting. I did have to clearance the factory bracket a little bit just to make room for the nuts on the transmission. But I was able to get all of the bolts back into the cross member because all of the nuts are welded now, and so you just screw the bolt in. It's a little trickier to put the cross member in than before, because before I could just wail on the bolts with a hammer. But still, it's doable, and that's what's important. We have room for days over here now for the drive line, for the future Atlas and the Atlas shifter cables, for the exhaust. So lots of room for activities. The starter is no longer an issue. So even though that was like a 2-day hiatus to move that link to this side, and I had to cut this huge hole in the floorboard there, it was the right way to do it, and it cleaned up pretty much the entire project, made it a lot easier. So should be pretty smooth sailing from here. So the next step is to drill the holes for the transmission mount, and you can see right there, that's the hole we're going to shoot for. I've already got it marked out with a Sharpie. I just kind of stuck it up through this hole here and found it and marked it on both sides. So unfortunately now I have to take this cross member back off, drill that hole, finish weld everything, paint everything, and then reassemble the cross member, hopefully for the last time. While I have the cross member down, I'm also going to come in here and cut this as well, because I don't really want to be cutting the floorboard out with the transmission like a finger width away, just in case I nick it. So while the transmission's down, I'll come up here. I'm going to mark this now, and then when the transmission's down, I'll come up here and cut it out and make room for everything, and then we should be good to go to put our shifter on too. Well, there you have it, folks. That's the transmission mount conversion plate. It's not very square and it's not very pretty or complicated, but it'll totally do the job. I don't really care. It's tucked away. No one's ever gonna be able to see it. It's kind of crazy how close the mounts were. You can see how like off they are though. It's funny. So there you have it. Just need to paint it. Well, that's it for this video. We got the cross member in, we got the upper link moved, and all the clearance issues sorted. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking around. If you liked what you see, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.